We have big plans for the 3 mitzvot: candle lighting, challah, kashrut, and mikveh, tat mishpacha. So stay tuned. I mean, we're gonna already. I don't know if you know, but I made an appeal at the funeral. The people should light Shabbat candles, and if you do, call someone, at least one person who doesn't. Dozens of people, dozens if not more that I know, lit candles this Friday night.
Amen.
Including one family, it's a mother and a daughter that never lit before. Rabbi Raskin sends me a voice note. Rabbi Raskin from Kotziluk.
Yeah.
So he was in a store in Westminster, and after the funeral was in the morning, and there was a woman that was there at the funeral, and she says, "I just want you to know, my daughter and I, we're going to start lighting." So this is this one story, but so there's a tremendous awakening that people, as you say, it weighs very heavily, and people want to do. Somebody coined a good little phrase yesterday in shul. How'd she say it? Ein diburim rak ma'asim. There are no words, we just have to do. We have to do and not allow her death, God forbid, in vain. It's not in vain. She has her mission, but it's not a but. Part of her mission, and every one of us, is the impact that we continue after our physical sojourn on earth. That's part of our mission. So, therefore, the loved ones or anybody that hears about it and knows about it is moved by it, has a responsibility to respond. If you heard about it, then you're going to do something. And that, in turn, is my mission. I need to hear this because I'm not doing just a favor for that soul. We're all connected. I need to do that, to grow, to do more for my contribution, for my neshama, and for hers, and so it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
I mentioned yesterday briefly that it's based on the one of the Rebbe Sichas that Vayir Chai Yisara, the Parsha Chai Yisara, which means the life of Sarah, deals with her death. The opening verse is her death, and all of the events that the Torah describes thereafter all happen after her death, and superficially they seem to negate her death, including negate meaning to say like she's gone and no longer effectual. For example, Avram remarries Keturah and has children. That's the last story of Chai Yisara, and then of course the beginning is her burial, and it's all very emphatically post-death. She sent Keturah away. Now Keturah comes back. But if you go deeper, it's the opposite. All of the events that happen are because of her. So Avram remarries, and yet he has children with Keturah and sends them away to the east. And who is his heir? Yitzchak. That's the final words of the parsha. Whose influence is that? That's Sarah. Because he argued that Yishmael, Halavai Yishmael, and she said no. God said no, she said no, and then she sent Keturah away. So if you go deeper, it's all really the effect. And even the cave of Machpelah, the first story there is a burial of the cave of Machpelah. Now again, that's burial, that's the opposite of life. Looking deeper, you see the imprint, the signature of Sarah. Why? Because till then, that gravesite belonged to humanity. Adam and Chava are buried there. It's not exclusively Jewish. But once Sarah is buried there, and she was the one that forged the Jewish identity. No, Yitzchak, not Yishmael. Yishmael has his mission, but the Jewish people start with Yitzchak. It all starts with the mother, the first Jewish mother, which is Sarah. Once she's buried there, in Cave Machpelah, so then it becomes exclusively a Jewish place, because consistent with Sarah's contribution to forge the Jewish identity. We all come from Adam, but now begins the unique Jewish contribution. Avram was universal. His name conveys that. Av Hamon Goyim, a father to a multitude of nations. Literally, because not just Yitzchak, but Ishmael, and then later he remarries Keturah, that she has 7 children. So he's a multitude, he's universal, which he should be, because monotheism and the basic teachings of the 7 Noahide laws are universal, which Avram promulgated. But Sarah's role was, Sarah, now the next stage in God's plan, the Jewish people, which Avram resisted because it's not his thing. It's pure chesed, it's everybody.
Yeah.
But she's Malchut. Malchut is the Jewish people, which we're going to learn right now. That idea of Malchut, that's the Jewish people. Kings, leaders, light unto the nations with a unique mission. So if we probe deeper in the story, on the contrary, every event, and there are other events now, but it's not our subject, are all because of and as a result of her influence. And therefore, that's why it's called the life of Sarah. Because when do you see if somebody truly lived? So while they're alive, we make noise. You can't help but be noticed. But what happens afterwards? There's a burial and a eulogy, and goodbye, Charlie. No one talks about this person anymore because there's nothing to say. They didn't contribute, and there's no seeds, there's no fruit, there's no light. God forbid. So true life is the effect afterwards, the growth, and how seeds beget fruit that beget further fruit, and so on. I was saying about SIGAL, and the story that I just told you now, and it's continuing, and will continue in ever greater measure, the mitzvot. And we had a big shir yesterday. 125 women came in the afternoon. They want to continue. I mean, it just there is a movement. It's a deep groundswell coming from deep in the neshama across the community. So it's a testament to the life that she lived. And it really was, because I could tell many stories. Just Tillim was a big thing for her, for others. And she walked a lot. She was killed, Rahman al-Islam, walking. So on Tuesday, the family of this little boy, the Diamond family, had asked at 11 o'clock, everybody say 4 chapters of Tillim. So she was walking with a party, a posse of friends. It was 11 o'clock, in Hampstead, 11 o'clock, stop. Everybody stop. They go, we're going to say Tillim. Everybody has a phone, so you know, or they repeat after her, whatever it was. This is in the middle of her walk. There's a child that needs our prayers. I mean, typical, she's not materialistic this way, and more than that, she was on a journey. She was on a journey, started wearing a hat and shul just the last 2 weeks, last week, inspired by her mother, really, Sarah.
Stephen, I actually spoke to her about the hats. Rabbi knew she was telling me also the same thing. It was that they asked everyone, all women should cover their hair on one particular day. And that particular day, she started by wearing a baseball cap, and everyone's, at the beginning when she was walking, nobody asked because the baseball cap is no big deal. But then unfortunately, we went to a shiva house and she's still wearing her hats and people are looking. And then she went to another shiva house where it was really like the modern Orthodox kind of, and they were asking like, why is she wearing a hat inside? And she said, she's trying to kind of avoid getting into the whole, she didn't want to like preach to anybody else. She said she took on the mitzvah for an honor that this child should get a refuah. And then from there, she said she's going to do it on Shabbos. And it was also inspired from her mother. So it kind of came from 2 directions. But she was very conflicted because her daughters were like, first you turn out the light in the fridge and now you're covering your hair, because once she wore a scarf and they were like, and but she still did it.
Well, actually, since you mentioned the story, you were there yesterday, that the daughter had a big part in it because she was wearing this big hat and she said, Ma, that's not suitable. This is what you should wear. And so the daughter really is part of this as well. So it's where the tichel, whatever it is. So it's amazing. So I'm saying this is a life that is, it's true, all of us. I mean, this is the point. The lives you need to live are lives that continue to inspire after our physical passing. And the only way for that to happen is when our lives are truly living, not existing, but living and growing. If we're growing and we contribute now and we're directed outwards, not just about me, but outwards, then that outward energy, holiness, godliness, kedusha continues to grow. Yeah, so we were just saying, so now let's continue where we're up to. And I have to finish at at 9:05. So if I get carried away, you please tell me. Okay? So what are we learning? I mentioned Malchut. Malchut is actually a feminine property. Sovereignty, royalty, is a feminine property. In fact, it is the feminine attribute of God. Bina is also, to a degree, as you know, there are 10 divine attributes. Chachma is male, Bina is female. So Bina is, and that's why an extra measure of Bina Yetera Nitna Be'isha. Hashem granted a woman an extra measure of Bina. But in addition to Bina, maybe even more so, is Malchut. Sovereignty. Now you would think that's kind of a male thing, rulership. That's a male thing, to dominate, to be a king, to be a... Hardly you would think it's a woman's role or a woman's attribute. But the emes is that it is, because this lies at the core of our discussion. What is Malchut? The core of Malchut, of sovereignty, is... You ready for this? The dignity of being, or one's sovereign, essential, non-negotiable worth. That's what Malchus means. That's what sovereignty means. And that's the feminine property. Why? Because as we've learned, the male's primary identity is not about a being. It's about performing. Hence he has all these obligations and uniforms and performances that he needs to do. That defines him. The woman is not defined by performance, but by being. So the guy does Jewish, she is Jewish. And that feminine part in him is the is Jewish. I am, not I do. Which is why, as everybody knows, and that's what you're thinking right now as I'm talking, what determines whether you're Jewish is exclusively if your mother is Jewish. Your father could be Moses. If the mother is not Jewish, the child ain't Jewish. Why? Because Jewish is being. It's I am. More than something I believe in and I do. It's I am. That's Malchut. That's Malchut. And that's why the other property to true kingship, as we explained last week, is humility. Which again, you would think the other way. The king is the opposite of humility. But the true king is, not the corrupted form of Malchut. But the true king is utterly humble. His whole identity is serving the people. His whole identity is a vehicle for Hashem's word. I think I mentioned this last week. Not here, but I did mention it. A wonderful insight from Rabbi Sachs on this week's parsha. I think it's on this week's parsha, would make sense, which talks about the menorah. And he makes the very keen observation regarding the symbol of leadership for the Jew and the symbol of leadership for the world. And they could not be more contrasting. The symbol from time immemorial, going back to ancient civilizations, the symbol of leadership is the pyramid. And there's a word for it, the juggernaut, I think it's called. The pyramid, not just in ancient Egypt. Because the leader is the top, and everybody serves the leader. You serve the higher up, the higher up, the higher up, the higher up, and it's all for the king. Everybody serves him. What's the Jewish symbol? Is the menorah. And the menorah is an inverted pyramid, or a triangle that goes this way. Right? The branches extend diagonally as the Rambam and Rashi tells us they were straight lines extending from the center shaft, forming the shape of the opposite of a pyramid. So where's the leader? At the foundation. The point is the bottom, not at the top. And he serves all the branches to lift the lights, as Hashem told Aaron, raise the lights, bring the oil to Moishe. Moishe then gives to Aaron, and raise the lights of Jewish neshamas, and furthermore illuminate the world. The menorah is the symbol of the Jewish mission to illuminate the world. So all the parts, the whole design of the menorah conveys that. And where's the leader? At the point, at the bottom. So true malchus, true leadership must be the profound humility, which is what King Dovid Hamelech embodied, and all great Jewish leaders, starting with Moshe Rabeinu, who was insisting that Aaron is more worthy. My older brother. I may have told you this little bit of personal nachas, but I think it's so beautiful. When my oldest grandchild, Elimelech Spalter, was in kindergarten, and he was 5 years old. So at the end, they have a yearbook. They make a yearbook, not very cute, with a picture of the kid, and then they ask the kid questions, and that's his answer. A whole lot of questions. One of the questions is who is your hero? Who is your favorite? Who is your hero? So you thumb through the book, and you get Superman, Mashiach, I don't remember the other answers. But the Himal's answer was Aaron. Aaron. I think they wrote in the book because they were also stunned. Why? If you're that aware, this kid, about Aaron, so did Moishe, Moses. Obviously, he was aware of the story. They teach it. Because he said, Aaron is always supporting Moishe. He's a true chassid of Moishe. His hero, Moishe said Rebbe. So that's, but the hero, the relatable hero, is Aaron. They're a team. So Moishe argued that Aaron should be the one, but God said, he'll support you. He'll be your mouthpiece. But you are the leader. I can't speak. And it's just interesting, why Moshe Rabeinu on the deep level, why he was unable to speak. And if you look carefully at the story, there are two levels. The beginning, he speaks with difficulty, and then as time progresses, he can't speak at all. He's like closed. Aral Sfatayim. First, the Torah says, I speak heavily, kaved, heavy, slow, cumbersome. But then later, when he was going to Aaron, to Parai, Vanir al Sfatayim, which means completely closed. Uncircumcised their lips, closed. Which is even more, you can't speak. Or even less than heavy or slow speech. Chassidus explains that what was this? Because he felt the presence of God so powerfully that he couldn't speak. He's standing in the presence of the king, progressively deeper and deeper, to subdued, to virtual silence. This is because of his extreme humility and bittul. And then when he had to go to Parai, so the question, if he can't speak, so just send Aaron. And if he was anywhere Moshe's going to go, like this, and Aaron's going to explain. So what do you need Moshe to say anything for? Because what really breaks Parai is the presence of Moshe. Aaron articulates what he's saying, but that he's saying something that is godly and that he's in awe of, and what is this? That he gets from Moshe Rabeinu because of his humility. And this is all a feminine property, friends. Malchus. The Shabbos queen. Shabbat HaMalka. First she's a bride. Friday night she's a bride. By the time we come to Motzei Shabbat, she's the queen already. Lava Malka, we are accompanying the Queen. Shabbos is the perfect Messianic era. It's the feminine era, where God's Malchut is established on earth. V'haital Hashem Amlucha, v'haya Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz. So who embodies that and who is integral to that is the woman, especially at the end of exile. What I'm saying is that the big principle that we have, that Chassidus explains, that the beginning is wedged in the end. The highest levels come out at the end. The uppermost thought is manifest in the final act. At a simple level, a person wants to build a home. So his very first thought is the complete home. That's what starts the whole project. The final thing in place completes the first thought, the beginning and the end. And all the stages in the middle, but it's the beginning and the end that share the common essence, the vision and the actuality. So the beginning and the end are the same. That's why the beginning of our history, Sarah is the hero. When arguing with Avraham, God says, whatever Sarah says, you listen. As we just described earlier, the whole very delicate identity and future of the Jewish people is all because of Sarah. That's the beginning of history. Then subsequently, the woman has more of a backseat role overtly. As we go through the process of making the house for God, we come to the end, which is now, out of Mashiach. Now again, it's the role of women. Like the beginning, to highlight. She was not highlighted as Chassidus and the Rebbe does today. Because it wasn't the time. In the beginning, now is the time. So now is the time. But the women emerge as the force for redemption, and they embody the whole redemption. It's all about Shabbat, Malchut on earth, and that's what she is. And that's what we're seeing before our eyes, the whole Shluchot phenomena, undreamed of in history. Women, Shluchot, they're leaders in the forefront, in conventions, and the Rebbe speaks to them, and this is before Mashiach. Here, SIGAL is part of that, in her way, in her journey, and what she has and continues to inspire is all part of this. And we dare not, as I said at the outset, not just for her, for us, for Hashem himself, allow this to dissipate. It surely will not. As I said, we have Be'ezer Hashem, big plans, especially for the girls, for the young people, to be part of this. The Rebbe's campaign that even girls should light candles, it met with such resistance in the Orthodox world, in the Rabbinic world. But like everything, the Rebbe continued undaunted. In the end, people catch on or they don't. But in the end, they will. But that was a big, why? Because this is to get the woman, even the child, the Jewish girl, even, her candle. And that goes back to Sarah too, and Rivka, because they lit candles before they were bat mitzvah. So it's coming out in the end. I was going to add something else very interesting, just flitted out of my head. What was it? We're talking about the candle. This is a related thing. I said it's worth sharing. I said that people will catch on, but they won't catch on. Slowly they are. The whole Orthodox Torah Hasidic world is going through a profound metamorphosis. The resistance they had to Chabad and Hasidus and outreach and the ideas of Chabad, divine providence and Simcha, it's being adapted and absorbed by everybody. They've worked very hard to get to this place. Very hard. But it's happening. Baruch Hashem. And a big part of it, interestingly enough, are the Chabad houses in the most remote places, which was what Lubavitch was doing that got the ire of everybody else. We'd actually send a couple to a place where there's no yeshiva and besifka, but the attitude was non-religious Jews made their choice, religious Jews made their choice, and you live with it. And you don't fraternize because you'll be contaminated. And worse things even. What changed? What changed this is really those Chabad houses, especially in Asia. Especially in Asia, because from businessmen, Hasidic or Lithuanian, Litvish Torah, going on business to China, to India, to Thailand. Where are you going to go Shabbos if you go to Chabad? Where are you going to go? So for the first time in their lives, they're hearing Chassidus. Neshama, divine providence. For the first time in their lives, they're sitting at a table with a non-religious Jew, and hey, he's Jewish like me. Took down the barrier the last 10, 20 years, less than 20 years, dissolving these barriers. And many of these quarters in the Orthodox world, they were very opposed. And I'm telling you, you can't appreciate it today, because violently in some cases, and I mean it extremely violently, are now supporters, financially and in many other ways. So there's a song that just came out now. This is just typical. It just is expressive of, wow, look what the Rebbe has done. So what's this song? It's a dance song in Yiddish. In Yiddish, it's coming from the Hasidic Yiddish world, speaking world. And the whole song is, every Jew has a pintele, has a spark of the divine. Even the non-observant and outright black, that's the whole song. The celebration that every Jew, this is such a revolution. They're making a song of this and dancing to it. It's called Pintele Kadisha, a holy spark. And the accent they're using is the Hungarian Polish accent, because that's the way you speak Yiddish. It's Hungarian, that's their accent. Pintele Kedisha, and this is it's a new hit song. What a revolution! And he says that even the Yid, I think he says that Russian, or what he uses, strong words. Even he's not Shemesh Shabbos, not observant. Every Yid has the Pintele. I didn't hear the rest of the lyrics. I guess the point is reach out to it. And I just got I didn't start this, but I got a phone call. It's a whole process. Bottom line is, in the Bells community, whatever it is, Vision, I don't know which one exactly it is. So there's a teacher there. I'm not going into details, but a teacher, or a Jewish fellow, non-religious, completely secular. Anyway, so some issue there, and so they somehow want to reach out to Chabad, and came to my doorstep to reach out and help this fellow. So who's instigating this? The Hasidim over there. Not so long ago. It's a religious problem, not a physical. It's your choice and it's your problem. But no, we have to help the guy. This is this is absolutely new thinking. It's before Mashiach, and it's all part of it. The women at the forefront. The whole world starting to hear Hasidus, Neshama, embracing the unity of Jewry. The final frontier is the Orthodox world, the Torah world. It's the final frontier that has to be conquered for Mashiach to come. And it's happening. To embrace all Jews, to embrace Hasidus, to learn about Hashem and understand the purpose of creation. It isn't just about your Olam Haba. It isn't just about your reward. You becoming a Gadol, a great scholar. It's way beyond that. A divine plan, God revealed on earth, of which you are integral to. Every Jew is precious. All the ideas you hear all the time here.
4 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, you want me to stop early? We can stop early.
No.
I'm just joking. Okay, so, yeah, thank you. So all of this is what? All tied in. Why? Because what are we learning, friends? Remember we're learning. We're learning, yeah? The 3 events that all occur on the same day, the giving of the Torah, the passing of Dovid Hamelech, and the passing of the Baal Shem Tov. So what we talked about today is Malchus, which Dovid Hamelech embodied. There's one more property to Malchus, all tied into that. I think we spoke about it last week, yeah, that the nature of the king, subject relationship, is all tied in, is that it has to come from the people. It comes from the people, from below to above. You cannot force kingship, that's dictatorship. Kingship, as we say every night in Ma'ariv, talking about God's kingship, they accepted your kingship willingly because it can't be any other way. So it comes from below. The whole point of our discussion is the three stages in the fulfillment of the purpose of creation. Number one, God is accessible. That's at Sinai. God comes down, that's from above to below. Then begins stage two, from below to above, us refining and elevating the world. That's Malchus. That's our overtures to God as the people declare their allegiance and loyalty to the king. And the point about Malchus is, and here's the key point, I guess I'll elaborate next week, is it's a paradoxical relationship. All truth comes in paradox and irony. The deeper the truth, the deeper the paradox. And that is that on the one hand, it comes from the people. The king cannot create this relationship whatsoever. On the other hand, there's no relationship that is so total and absolute. The king owns the people. He owns them. He owns their property. Parents don't own children. Teachers don't own disciples. Husbands don't own wives, and wives don't own husbands. Nobody owns anybody else except the king. Why? Because the people, and the only way he can is because they have given themselves to him. They've surrendered themselves. We are yours. We see in you, in your eyes, we see ourselves. That's the deep meaning here. We see ourselves in you. We see that you embody the core essence of all of us, which is this humble Pintalia, that song that they're singing, which means that spark of you, Pintala Kedisha, that holy spark. We see that holy spark in you because of your humility. And therefore we totally surrender to it, that it embrace every part of our being. It's total and absolute, but it comes from the people. That's stage two. Stage two is all about the elevation from below to above, in the deepest way. More detail as we consider other things that define King David, most notably the one who laid the ground for the building of the Beit HaMikdash. And the Beit HaMikdash carried his name. And we'll talk about the difference between the Beit HaMikdash and the house of God that existed till then. Radically different. Not the same. And all thanks to Dovid Hamelech. So that's all part of stage two. God willing, we shall be well next week.